Good afternoon and welcome to the TechTalks final day. Before we begin, I would like to thank our sponsors, Sure Lang and Site. We are BIXA, we are the major AV association in the world. And besides being the organizer of this, co-owners of this show, we also organize the Infocom shows around the world in different countries. This is the first session of this day afternoon. We have two more, and this is on sustainability. Time to get smart about electronic waste. There is no way when you throw it away. We have Christina, DeBono, President, Safe Sustainability in AV, and Joe Perez, Chief Technology Officer, ClearTech. I leave you with them. Thank you.
Terrific. I would like to thank you for joining our SAVE session about controlling AV electronic waste. There is no away when you throw it away. This is part of SAVE's educational series on topics related to our mission, which is to bring stakeholders together in the AV industry to take concerted action to achieve the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, established by all 193 nations at the UN with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We will present an overview on electronic waste generated by the commercial AV industry, where it goes, and if it's recklessly disposed, how it contributes to the contamination of water, air, soil, and endangers the health of workers who handle it. The role of the AV industry is in controlling e-waste directly relates to Goal 12 of the SDGs, which focuses on responsible manufacturing, reuse, repurpose, recycling, and reduction at every stage of a product life cycle. You're familiar with consumer electronic waste, the cell phones, computers, monitors, and so on that are overwhelming recycling facilities, but most of us in the AV industry don't think about the waste that we produce. Based on components used in most electronics, the toxicity in discarded control systems, touch panels, signal processors, mixers, amps, cables, LCD video walls, and projectors can be substantial. Commercial AV waste is mixed in the stew of millions of other obsolete electronic components that include computers, cell phones, dishwashers, dryers, which have been shipped to underdeveloped countries and dumped, burned, dismantled without worker protection. These so-called recycling operations release toxic waste and affect the health of workers and their communities who are unaware of the hazards. But it doesn't stay there. If it's in the air and water or soil, it finds its way back home, often by way of the ocean. In 2 years, the commercial AV industry projects global revenue to reach $325 billion in new technology and services. That means the technology we are going to replace will become electronic waste. We will rely on obsolescence and replacement for most of that revenue growth, and that will result in a huge volume of discarded equipment. Think about it in this way. Every time a customer upgrades with a new product, an old product enters that waste stream. In 2019 alone, the global electronic waste stream, which includes both consumer and commercial products, exceeded 59 million metric tons. If we use the 4% annual increase projected by the European Environmental Agency, by 2030, the global e-waste will exceed 90 million metric tons per year. That's the same year the UN hopes to achieve its Sustainable Development Goals. How much of that e-waste will be ours? Waste from the commercial AV industry is a silent part of the stream. We have no data on what percentage of the world's e-waste comes from our business. SAVE believes that there's an immediate need for a country-specific inventory of our industry's e-waste and disposal in order to establish practices, training, and best practices. Our industry has never officially acknowledged its contribution to the electronic waste stream. Our associations and manufacturers provide no recommendations on best practices concerning AV electronic disposal or recycling. For example, if you're a veteran from the digital transition in 2013, do you recall manufacturers providing any technical guidance on how we should dispose of old CRT televisions? Depending on the size, CRTs contain up to 8 pounds of lead. So both the US and EU environmental agencies have classified components from broken CRT TVs as toxic. But with LCD panels, we no longer worry about it, right? Actually, LCD panels waste is not benign. When LCDs are damaged or dismantled, they emit what the American Chemical Society reports as a potentially toxic class of chemical pollutants called liquid crystal monomers. How do we address this without training or even a basic understanding of the challenges? That's what this program is about. Is designed to address, to help the AV industry professionals face the impact of electronic waste. As an industry, we can establish a collaborative effort to fix this broken system and aim towards a common goal of professional and ethical behavior to benefit the well-being of our communities, our changing climate, and our environment. But the longer we wait, the more difficult it will become.
Pretty impactful statistics there, Christina, right? So our industry makes up most of its revenue through product sales, replacement, and whether by design or consequence, our technology has shorter lifespans compared to years in the past. Obsolescence and competition have shortened the cycle between product software and the introductions of new products. And our technology and expertise is challenged by unexpected events like pandemics, for example. How many years has our industry promoted video conferencing, right? To increase productivity and lower the operational costs. We kept making it cheaper and easier to use. But it took one single year of a deadly pandemic to change the acceptance and impose a widespread use. This pandemic really caused a big impact in the entire world. And we had to change the way we were doing things and add hardware to PCs in order to quickly adapt. How many old codecs were on your warehouse shelves? Or how many of you dropped them in the dumpster, for example? Right? Even new products unintentionally produce e-waste right out of the box. For example, thousands of commercial AV items are shipped with external power supplies and cables to accommodate different international electrical standards. What does an American customer do with the power supply meant for Europe? Or a European customer do with the power supply meant for Asia? They're thrown out by either the contractor or the customer, or they sit in a box and then they end up in a landfill somewhere. A decade ago, when we began to transition from analog to digital and network protocols, we removed thousands and thousands of miles of cabling, almost all which, like extra power supplies, that's sheathed with PVC. According to the Center of Biological Diversity, PVC and other plastic material is hazardous and toxic when leached into soil, waterways, or to the air. And how does it get there? Despite international laws, unethical recyclers ship e-waste to developing countries where unskilled workers melt the circuit boards, soak microchips in acid, and burn plastics to retrieve the precious metals. The impact on soil, air, and water is terrible for our health, the workers, and their communities. It's devastating. Burning insulated wire to retrieve its copper releases up to 100 times more cancer-causing dioxins than other waste and makes its way into our water supply. Marine environments, agricultural land, ultimately into the food chain. So how do we address our responsibility? I know many of you have thought about that. Maybe not. But this is why we're here. Commercial AV is multi-layered. It's a community of manufacturers, distributors, reps, consultants, architects, designers, software developers, integrators, staging and rental companies. We see it here. AV equipment transfers through multiple owners, manufacturer to distributor, and integrator to the end user. And so does the accountability for the equipment at the end of its life. As much as we would like to think that we have a cozy little industry where business is relationship-based, it's not. It's transactional. We make and sell, we buy and sell, design and sell. Our global success requires technology obsolescence, it really does, and replacement of the products. But we are all accountable for the electronic waste that those transactions produce. Best practices for disposal can't work unless everyone in the chain of ownership endorses and supports it. If your product uses toxic materials, how would anyone know how to dispose of it? It could end up as just another box, thrown in a dumpster, buried in a landfill, shipped overseas, or dropped in the Atlantic. Now multiply that by thousands of discarded components throughout the entire world. What can you do? And how do we start? Recycling is the obvious solution to e-waste. And to do it ethically and responsibly, it's really expensive. But very few people understand why the unwanted equipment must be retrieved, shipped to a facility where the workers are protected and components are safely disassembled, identified, and separated into basic materials of plastic, glass, metal, and toxic elements. Typically, those are all piled in the same space, shredded. Whole components that can be resold, like microchips, are also isolated and categorized. Recycling an unwanted AV product like a flat panel is 5 to 10 times more expensive than dumping it in a landfill, right? Most recyclers are unfamiliar with the commercial AV industry. I've seen it myself. I've toured recycling facilities in North America, and I've seen it myself. They have never examined the internal components of a digital signal processor with 16 channels of echo cancellation, or a video controller, or a video wall They don't know what the 12-bit processing is and what components are made up of it. And some of them don't care. So we need to educate them too. If one asks you, for example, which of these toxic elements must be safely removed before recycling, how would you answer that? We just don't know. What if they asked us what materials should be recovered to be sold that make it worth recycling? Do we know? We need to be educated on it. If we don't know these answers, then our e-waste stream will continue to grow because we don't know how to place a value and make it worth recycling. According to the United Nations Global E-Waste Monitor Report, non-recycled electronic waste contains more than $10 billion of uncovered gold, platinum, copper, and precious metal every single year. So I'm going to stop there for a second and think about those numbers. 10 billion with the B every single year. I think those are the numbers to remember. Unless we ask our manufacturers to share component information, the burden of responsible disposal is really on the customer or the contractor. It's on us. That will force them to engage in disposal and recycling investment and trust that equipment will be shredded and won't be dumped or shipped to undeveloped communities where it's then burned or buried. Or even worse, as I mentioned earlier, dropped into the ocean where it'll eventually make its way right back. The concept of circular economy of recycling and repurposing makes sense with non-renewable materials like lead, gadmium, gold, aluminum, platinum, copper, zinc, silver. As an example, geologists estimate that we have already used more than a third of the copper on Earth. And 60% of that has been produced by the US, just for wire. So what can you do with thousands of feet of used network cables or coax? Some are trying to figure that out. And they're trying to figure it out on their own because there is no information available that'll tell them what to do or how to do it. But as an industry, we have to evaluate and agree on a solution. There are several organizations that certify e-waste recyclers. So that's where your search can begin, with a recycler that's certified as an e-steward, an electronic waste certification standard administered by the Basel Action Network, which is accredited all around the world. One of Bond's goals is ending the illegal and unethical international export and trade of toxic waste, especially electronic waste. And there are tons of videos on this on Netflix that you can see where they've tracked equipment with GPS trackers and where it's ended up from North America all the way across the world. So, short history. In 1989, the United Nations signed the Basel Convention Treaty, which restricted the international trade of toxic waste. Yet, there's still a massive flaw that has created toxic dumps in Vietnam, Nigeria, and Accra, Ghana, as well as other developing nations. Bonds introduced the e-Steward certification in 2009, which holds recyclers to a strict environmental standard. Among its requirements e-steward recycler must track all toxic materials downstream of their facility, account for them, and ensure proper management all the way to the end. Certifications are also offered by organizations which practice e-stewards standards, the e-steward standards of responsible recycling and reuse. There are other global electronic waste recycling certifications that you may encounter besides the e-stewards, including R2. Some of you may be aware of R2, which is responsible recycling, and RIOS, the recycling industry's operating standards. Also GRS, which have been established by NSF, a global organization that develops standards for recycling as well as other industries. Additionally, we have founded SAVE. SAVE supports its best practices approach to the way that commercial AV industry can replace, recycle, repurpose commercial AV electronics and other materials. We believe that industry can have an immediate positive impact on our communities and contribute to a healthier world. Our nonprofit organization can help AV companies and customers develop effective e-waste sustainability programs that are easy to articulate to both customers and suppliers. These are the guidelines to begin your commitment and contribution to this industry sustainability problem. Create a simple description of how your organization endorses and supports sustainability in the AV industry. And that's critical because you want everyone to accept, adopt, embrace this within your organization. 2, create a simple description of how your organization endorses and supports the sustainability in this industry, in the AV industry. In bid responses, include how you will deal with unwanted AV equipment that will establish credibility with your customers and with your suppliers as well. Work with your suppliers and competitors to try to lower the cost of recycling, right? The pickup disposal. Ask AV manufacturers to eliminate the unnecessary components like the power supplies that I was talking about earlier. They're not needed. And identify materials that require special disposal methods, and that's an important one. As well as other components that may have recycling value, because that's also important too. We talked about how much money there is in recycling and repurposing. Now, we know this may be ignored at first, but the more we ask our manufacturers, the more we ask our consultants, the more likely we're going to get it. And finally, consider becoming SAFE certified. We're all here to help. That can provide a wide range of resources to you and help implement a sustainability plan for your organization and promote your involvement.
So SAFE has also established a program for repurposing and reusing AV equipment. We're establishing a network of NGOs and educational institutions to enable companies in our industry to donate used AV equipment, give your AV equipment a second life at the end of its first life. So if you're interested, we can share you the details after this presentation. If you would like to discuss best practices, let us know. We'll talk it through, help educate your employees, and assist in finding a better way of disposing your unwanted equipment. It's a free service that we offer for the benefit of our industry and our planet. For our industry, customers, community, and planet, the price tag of dumped electronic waste goes well beyond the cost of recycling and reuse. We believe that our industry is ready and required to do its part in safeguarding the future, because there is no away when you throw it away. Thank you.
Thank you.